welcome today's business meeting of the Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I want to wish
Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
if we're going to be on TV, we might as well get heard.
This evening I'm going to ask Mrs. Hobbs if she will join us at the podium, and she is going to give us a report on trauma responsive schools and the things that are happening here at Richmond Community Schools. Mrs. Hobbs.
Thank you. I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about where we are, what we've learned, and why we're heading in the direction that we are. Our goal is to really be trauma responsive. Our students, as you know, are coming to school with more and more challenges. And at that time, we need to adjust what we're doing. So what you're going to see is just a little bit about where we started and why we started there, where we are right now, and then where we need to head. If you look at this, and I can provide this to you in my weekly bulletin so you can read those facts. Those are some really interesting facts. When you look at a third of all students have experienced childhood adversity. And when we talk about, for years the ACE study has been around, and that's something that we talk about, adverse childhood experiences. That's a study that's been around. It started out with about 10 questions. It now is 20 questions. And if you look at what we are doing in Richmond Community Schools within our city limits, just what we experienced in the spring of last year, the trauma that affected our high school, that along with when you look at office discipline referrals, as well as our mental health needs. So if you look at every month I send you where we are with mental health, and students who start out, we typically in August are serving a lot of RCS kids. By the end of the year, we're serving a lot of Centerstone kids. Those kids are rolling into mental health services. And so based on all of those things, we've decided that we needed to look at what we're doing and the practices that we have. In February of 2017, I was blessed to hear Dr. Desatel. She is a professor at Butler University, and she has focused on neuroscience. She's got multiple books out, but the day that I got to hear her, she talked about priming the brains for learning and well-being, and she talked about brain structure. All of those ACEs that we talked about, all of the trauma kids experience, it changes a child's brain structure, and it finally gave words to what we have all known about kids for a long time. It really talked about the brain. Later that month, the behavior specialist and I were able to watch a webinar. And through that webinar, we learned a lot of strategies that we felt like we needed to get into buildings. Oddly enough, 3 days later after the webinar, our behavior specialist went to their state behavior specialist meeting, and Dr. Desatel presented again. So within a month, we had 3 experiences with Dr. Desatel talking about how the brain structure and trauma affects kids. And so it's just really important to us that we roll that out to all of our buildings. So after we viewed that webinar, they went on Friday. The remainder of that spring, all of our buildings got to see the webinar, watch that, and just have some conversation about what we need to do to change. So during the 17-18 school year last year, we were blessed through the Sam Coastline Family Foundation to bring Dr. Desatel to our corporation. We did a 4-part series with her at the elementary levels. She was here for 1 full day in the boardroom with school teams. She then did 3 Skype sessions throughout the rest of the year to just have dialogue with teachers. And you think Skype sessions, but it really was pretty effective because every building got to ask questions, every building got to participate, and it was one cost, so it was extremely affordable for the district, and actually free to the district through the stamp coach line. Also last year, we were able to provide sensory equipment to all buildings. All special ed teachers were provided sensory equipment. Some buildings chose to set up a sensory room. Our high school has probably one of the best sensory rooms and age appropriate. If you have the chance and you want to walk over there, I'd be happy to do that with you. Our high school construction class built a sand table that our wheelchairs can go under. So we're incorporating everything that's happening at the high school. The next thing that we talked about was an amygdala reset station, and that is just kids use a fight or flight. We need to help them reset. We need to help that, and so every classroom has, in the elementary, has an amygdala reset station. And then all of our special education, we implemented resource rooms because we needed something for our kids prior to them being sent to the office. We needed a place for them to de-escalate and to be a part of what was going on there. If you look at these pictures, and these are just fun, and these are one of the things that I hate about doing a public thing. You see lots of cute little smiley faces and not really great school faces. But if you look on there, we've been lucky with some grants. So you'll see a couple sensory houses that are in our rooms. You'll see some kids using some flexible seating. We're using a lot of flexible seating. What we're finding is that our kids, especially kids who've been born addicted, need a lot of sensory input. And so we're able to give that to them and they're able to learn. And one of these pictures in the top right hand corner, that is a teacher just working with a kid, and she was actually assessing him. And if you know this student, you know he is in constant motion. But what she did is she just put stuffed animals on the table, and the entire time she assessed him, he flipped through the stuffed animals and just pulled and tugged, and but she got all of the information that she needed. What we have to do with teachers is help them understand that just like a diabetic needs insulin, our kids need the sensory input, and that comes in different ways for different kids. So we're not handing them toys to play with, we're handing them tools so that they can engage. And I think that's really important, and it's a really big shift. At Charles and Star has done CrossFit and has engaged with our community in CrossFit. Charles is doing yoga, so down in the bottom right hand corner you'll see the lights out in the gym and they're doing yoga. And so if you walk into our buildings, you'll see any of these brain aligned strategies happening in any classroom. What may appear to you as a kid playing or doodling or fidgeting, that's exactly what they're doing, but they're getting the sensory input that they need to be able to learn. This past summer, I was able to go with 3 principals and our behavior specialists to outside of Detroit, Michigan. It was not the nicest place, but it was a really, really great conference. But we were able to go to 7 different sessions. So between the 6 of us, we attended 7 different sessions. Some of the sessions only had 1 person in it, but many of those had 2 people. So we were really lucky to go through, it was through Star Global, and they are based out of Oregon, but they are a nationally renowned trauma institute. And so all of those things that you can see there, we were able to bring back. What we brought back we brought back tools, and we brought back resources in hands to take straight into the classroom. We will be meeting and continuing to meet to have conversation about what we learned. One of the sessions that I went to, and I'll talk about it in just a minute, is one on compassion fatigue, and that's one that really kind of hit me hard. And where we need to go with this. We now know what we know, but our intermediate and high school, if there was never an urgency, it happened in May of last year at Richmond High School. So we've got to roll this out into our intermediate and high schools, and they're ready. They're asking for it. Our kids are demanding it of them. So our 5th graders who've had this stuff for a year and a half are demanding that of their 5th grade teachers. And so we're rolling those things into our middle school and our high school. We need to continue to support our elementaries thinking outside the box, and that's kind of what brain aligned strategies are. It's not the typical desks in rows. And so the other thing that we really want to get to is the full incorporation of social emotional learning. Title IV, Dr. Reynolds and a team of us worked on the Title IV grant, and we're really going to be able to implement some really neat things and get resources into all teachers. And the last thing that I want to say is that the compassion fatigue, and it's sometimes you'll hear vicarious trauma. It is what the adults that work with these kids go through because we experience what kids experience. And so it's really important that we help our adults take care of themselves as well. If you were here and were able to hear Mr. Terrell's welcome back, he talked about that a little bit, and it's something that we're continuing to have conversations with our staff about. Take care of yourself or you can't take care of our kids. But most importantly, we now have the information, so we need to really move from being trauma informed to being trauma responsive. So as we move forward, we're going to work with those Title IV dollars. With the STAM Coastline has been wonderful to our buildings and making sure that they have resources, and then we can roll that out. I'll be using special ed dollars to continue to build up those sensory rooms and to do some things differently for kids. So as you're walking around buildings, don't look at it as toys, look at it as tools. And so that's the big shift for lots of our teachers and folks who walk in, they think that kids are playing. Well, they are playing, but they're also learning. And so that's just really important move that we need to make. So, do you have any questions? Mm-hmm.
How is CYS and the high school alternative school program
involved? See, Carrie has been involved from the get-go. Our behavior specialists work with those buildings as well. As we roll it out, we're rolling it out to whole staffs. Our hope is that and I hope that I can say this, in the January PD, we're really going to try to roll out some options for some trauma-informed care for teachers. We want teachers to be able to have the resources. Mr. Amix was one of the principals who went with us this summer, and Miss Baker. So those two principals were able to go, and they went to Michigan with us this summer. So they're ready and they're willing. Carrie is working very closely with Centerstone. We were able to add a layer of service through Centerstone at CYS this year that has created some real wraparound services for kids within the building, and then those also carry home with the kids. First page. Mm-hmm. And that's what Dr. Reynolds and I talked about today, is that these are all national statistics and getting things locally. I can get some things based on what we get from Centerstone and what people are really willing to reveal. That's one of the things, is that there's shame in it, and we have to move from there being shame in it to being a piece of what we do to try to help and alter what we're doing for kids. I will say one of the things when I say where we're headed, Jenny Aloriaga and I were able to attend a preschool where Dr. Desatel focused on early childhood. And it's very, very interesting what our 3-year-olds are coming to school with. When you look at our statistic here in our own community of the children that are born addicted and the sensory needs that are coming out of that, I think it'll be really enlightening to see what our preschool can roll through on that. I didn't hear the first drum. Yep, it's kind of all part of it, but I think like alcohol, fetal alcohol, those will kind of roll into more than likely and through the developmental delay and through the special ed route, so they'll already have some services. But what we don't have in special ed, unless we can get it under other health impairment, are those kids with sensory needs. We're seeing a lot of kids who either don't feel touch, don't want touch. There was never any bonding that happened early on, and so what we're finding is that those kids are the ones that are not getting identified for special ed, but they have some of the most significant needs. Mm-hmm. Meridian comes into our buildings, so they are they can come in if they have clients in our building. At this point, I don't know of any building that and it's the same thing that we do with Centerstone. The only thing we don't ask is they impact their education. But when I was a principal, and I still see that when I'm walking through buildings, Meridian case workers or case managers are sitting next to their clients in class helping. We're not going to deny if Reed sends in a clinician, we're not going to deny a clinician in our building if they can help us support what we're doing. Yeah. And when I speak of Centerstone, I speak of Centerstone simply because that's who we have our contract with.
And I know that. I just was curious.
Something that Sheila won't mention mention is that she presented we had a countywide initiative to kick off the year, back to school type of initiative, talking about mental health and trauma services, and Sheila presented at the conference that we held in the county, and it was on compassion fatigue, and it was outstanding.
And not just county, but
Oh, regional, yes.
yeah. So there were 3 counties represented.
And I have to, my last thing that I wanted to share with you before I go is this past Saturday, Butler offered a full day of neuroscience. Carrie Ann Polkmeek, Ashley Duncan, who's a kindergarten teacher, and Vicki Sane presented, and so they got to hear some really great speakers. Dr. Brandy Oliver, who's behind Teaching the Teen Brain, was there. And so they were keynote presenters in the breakout session. So it was really exciting to see our folks out there with some people who are working nationally. And Dr. Desatel is working nationally with Michael McKnight and has multiple books out. So it's exciting that they're recognizing what we're doing in Richmond.
Lucky this year, since school started, many of you have already been in the building, and we just wanted to invite you around. I'll give you a little handout just to give you some idea. Unfortunately, it is that snapshot thing, so it's what was happening that day. But if you can come by, we'd love to have it. I know Mrs. Hobbs is coming tomorrow, so she's going to come and hang out in our building tomorrow. Mr. Carroll came and watched my kids play in the dirt. I appreciate you stopping by. So even Mrs. Helton, we're working late at night. Unfortunately, I won't see the kids, but so we just want to let you know a little bit of what's happening. Ms. Washington Pierce, one of the things you might know is that private legal aid come to Hibbert. Ms. Washington is working on a number of different projects and legal aid activities. I got to help her with antibiotics and bacterial growth. Anything you'll see tonight, I know, it's funny. Science teachers have a strange sense of enjoyable, but it really is great. My friend, Dr. Jeffrey Hayes, came and spoke to her class about cardiovascular health. He's also my cardiologist, so as a middle school teacher, of course, I need one of those. And so he keeps going. And so he came and spoke at Hibbert, and it was really great to watch the kids literally dealing with a doctor who presents at Earlham, who presents at Stanford, places like that, asking him questions and putting him through it. So it was pretty exciting. So we also have a great choir, with choir and orchestra and band and so on, all the things that they've been able to do. And so a lot of this is already on here, kind of let you know what's happening. Because we've now been around a little while, we have We Are Savers coming. So we'll be working with the banks, especially West End. They're really great about it. They're setting up something for the kids where the students can invest and give a little money, and they actually get a 5% interest, which is pretty great. If I could do that, I'd be pretty happy too. Myself, I've been lucky enough now to get my robotics team going again. Some 5th graders this year who were 4th graders last year and worked with Miss Wise on the robotics team guilted me into doing robotics. So if any of you came when Kiwanis came last year, they came to Hibbert, and that day the 4th graders at that time came up and told me that they were good at robotics, and it was my job to now do so. So we're having a robotics team that meets. Tomorrow night is the last of a 3-week session on drag racing, and so they will be drag racing their robots tomorrow night. So if you get a chance, you're certainly welcome. From things like astronomy and so on, even technology work. Ms. Vinson is working with the kids on blogs in English, and so they're using some of our great one-to-one technology for Canvas, but also reaching out for blogs and things like that. It's just impossible to tell you all the stuff that's happening, but really the big thing is to let you know that the building's there. We'd love to have you come by. Some of you, the kids go through and stop by and visit it on other days. So really we just want to send an invitation. We'll stop by every month or two and let you know what's happening now. And if something strikes your fancy, come by and see. The 3-4s are working hard. Life Skills just finished their lemonade day, and now they're making some pretty awesome popcorn. So they're working on how to purchase things in the store and how to use it to cook with and so on. And then in the process, they're even going to start providing lunch for some of the staff. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So it's really neat to see what people are doing. So feel welcome if you can come by. Thank you. Appreciate you giving me just a minute there. I know you're busy, so I'll pass this around real quick. So much happens in buildings all over Richmond. It's just hard for you to be everywhere. And with us having so many programs, really sometimes hard to know what's going on. But we'll be back in a month or so. Let you know what the next day is at. Thanks for letting me start school. See you guys.
Okay, our consent items for your consideration this evening are 4.01, the approval of minutes, 4.02, human resources with the addendum that is at your desk this evening, 4.03, accounts payable, 4.04, monthly financial report, and 4.05, the approval of the Climate Laundry Service contract for food services.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent items? A motion from Jeff and a second from Brad? Motion from Jeff, second from Brad.
I will motion to accept.
I'm just rushing us today. Thank you for the motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any questions about donations? I'll do then. Thank you very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We will go on.
Okay, our next series of action items all relate to the budget. I'm going to ask Mrs. Scout if she'll just speak to those in order as we go through there. One thing that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, so earlier this week, Mr. Cross, Mrs. Scout, Dr. Reynolds, and myself were on a rather lengthy phone call, rating call for our bonding that's coming up next week. And I want to publicly thank Karen for her work on that. They were incredibly impressed with where we were at, very impressed with our financial status, especially when we look at the economics that are taking place around us in the city of Richmond and our county and region, and could not say enough great things about that. So we look forward to next week moving forward with that and getting more information about that, and we'll share that with you once we receive that. But again, just wanted you guys to know how impressed they were with that. Know that there's been some concerns about the budget timeline. Again, as I mentioned today in email, it's critical that we pass this tonight. We've had it since almost a month now, and according to Form 3, tonight was designated as the night that we will be passing that. There are all kinds of ramifications that come through if not. I know one thing that was brought up was a concern that if you pass this, then it's set for the next 12 months or for the year of 2019. We expect, especially with the new funding mechanisms that are going to be in place for schools in the state of Indiana beginning in January, that there will be multiple addendums, changes, amendments to the plans that are in place, and by no means is this set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. So, with that being said, we'll turn it over to Mrs. Scout unless there's further conversation this evening. Mrs. Scout.
So the motion to approve the second. I wanted to make a comment, considering there are still a few questions about some of this. I wanted to recommend that maybe we look very quickly, given the fact that we can go back and make an amendment if necessary, at maybe gathering together soon, like maybe even the off Wednesday or whatever, to get our questions answered, if there's any outstanding questions, so that we can still move forward and stay in compliance. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that maybe that will help us, and we can still get an
And I'd like to say to that, I'm a little confused as to why we would need to do that. We've had that information in our place, in, in our, in our, in our stuff for at least a month. So I personally think each one that didn't go through it or didn't ask the questions prior to that, we're a little remiss of not doing our job. So to have another subject, have another question, another discussion about something we should have already discussed.
Quite there, but
Almost there.
that way we can see there is something something different on the horizon. And so I get what you're saying, Debbie, but I want to make sure everybody has. And maybe we deal with it
Have these
individually.
discussions sometimes, that's fine, but if they actually take the time, she's actually took the time to present it and give it to us, and then we still have questions that, why haven't we gone back through that information and that we've already been given? Understand? So I just think that sometimes we bring up subjects that hurts us because we didn't bother to go back through the information we've already received. That's all I'm saying.
We are. Sorry. Okay. All those in favor of ruling the budget line 2 resolution, I skipped ahead. Like I told you, I must be in a hurry. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I want to move that.
that little bit more flexibility in the fact that you can amend this plan at any time. And all that we have to do is notice the department. So there's no longer the time period of an 8-week window in which we have to wait in order to get that approval before we can move on anything. Now we can do an amendment, we can post it on our website, we can post it to the gateway, and that's their notice. So it does provide a nice bit of flexibility as we move through future years. One other thing to note is that there is a change here at RCS. We have the ability this year to create our own plan as long as it contains some essential documents that the Department of Local Government Finance required. We determined that it was important for us to plan ahead farther than 3 years in this area, and our plan contains 10 years. So that's very important. It was something that when we had the call yesterday, they thought was a very strategic and smart move on our part to be sure to be planning that far ahead. Even though we all know things change, it did provide us some backbone when they saw our data. So that's just some notes for you, the board, also our taxpayers to know that we've made a few changes to our capital plan. If anyone has any questions, it is posted at the RCS website at www.wearerichmond.com. It's under the business office section. So at that, I recommend that we approve the plan.
Motion from Jeff Slifer to approve the capital projects fund adoption plan. Second. Slifer from Dixie Robinson. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next on the list is the bus replacement plan adoption.
The public hearing for the 2019 through 2023 bus replacement plan was held on September 12, 2018. The action required by September 26, 2018 is to adopt the subject resolution for this plan. Tonight, my recommendation is the Board of School Trustees adopt the 2019 through 2023 bus replacement plan as presented.
Okay, we have a motion.
We did. They have a very balanced 12-year plan. Right, the forms officially reflect 5, but we are still continuing to maintain the 12-year.
Exactly. Well, and there was a bit of misery that went in. Exactly. Well, but it was such a complicated thing to explain that, and it was pretty painful when it happened. Yeah. I don't know, are you finished talking about it? So do you wanna make a motion?
Who's second? John, did you? What do we have to do to, you approve your acceptance, you got a resolution.
All those in favor of approving the tax utility resolution as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
At some point, we are going to have a celebration about this. We have to figure out what that looks like, but there has to be a celebration, and we are definitely going to do it.
The next, action item does not have to be tonight, however, it's not necessary, when we look at that, tonight I am recommending approval of the internal controls manual. We have actually reviewed this manual a number of times, and it is posted for board record, however, it is not a public document. This internal control manual, was put together with the help of a number of us. We had corporate meetings, and Coca-Cola and Natchez provided us with guidance as well. And it was numerous helped us write a record on the right and continue to do so. It also provided us a really solid information tool when they were requesting our audit, and they knew our work was in it, and they were interested to see it. So, I think that's something that's kudos to all of us for jumping on board with that and really doing the effort and the work to get that information. So, tonight, it's my request that for a seat vote of just 11 absent, at the school board of vote, the RCS internal controls manual as recommended by the board.
Do I have a motion to approve the internal controls manual?
Second.
Any questions about this?
You are actually approving it as a working document, so what I'll tell you, I'm not changing it, I know every single time I have to change it, because it could mean that I have to change one stamp from a word that says this to this, I'm not sure, that you want to see all of that, however, any major moves are definitely information on.
Did you put it to that?
That makes more sense, actually. There's also a protection element to that too, that's not a public document, I would assume, right? That you're not sharing exactly how things move around inside. Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. All right, all those in favor of adopting the internal controls manual, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And my last action item is our MOU, the mutual understanding between the Wayne County Sheriff's Department and RCS regarding adult education courses. There's no change to this contract or agreements, as we have in the past. One minor change is that we will be having a new sheriff, in the beginning of the school year. And so both parties, the current sheriff and the future sheriff, have signed this document. To make it a smooth transition, the county has some concerns on that, and so we addressed that so we can have that information. That's the only change.
John said what everyone was thinking. There's a new sheriff in town.
Correct. So tonight, it's my recommendation that you approve the MOU for adult education courses at the Wayne County Jail between the Wayne County Sheriff's Department and Richmond Community Schools.
Do I
place in the RCS auction, which will take place on Saturday, October 13th, 2018 at 10 a.m. The auction will be located at the RCS bus garage and will be advertised in the plating item on Friday, September 28th and Friday, October 5th. Recommendation that the Board of School Trustees approves the opposite leading of items and the RCS auction to take place on Saturday, October 13th, 2018 as presented.
Do I have a motion to approve the advertisement for the auction?
I move.
Motion by Dixie Roberts, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Aaron Stevens. Any comments or questions?
Just, does a list go out? How do you?
Right, we'll have, they're building the advertisement right now, and there's information going out to the auctioneer, as well as the paper, and then, building administrators, are you asking about schools?
Yeah. If we
Building
want-
principals can go out there and take a look, see what's out there in the bus barns, if they want anything.
But is there?
Not personally for their building.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. They can have it personally if they come to the auction and buy it, but there's not a master list of all the items. It's just-
Okay.
But a lot of the items, big items that are gonna be in there will be, we have 9 school buses that'll be auctioned off this time. We have a lot of obsolete furniture that's no longer needed. Some old DVD players that are no longer needed in the
Sweet.
corporation. Things of that nature, so. But they'll have an opportunity, if they need it back in the building, they can go there and pick them out, take it back to the building. Or they can see if they want to come to the auction that day.
I'm assuming we've updated our physical asset sheet.
We do that every year. Yes.
Very good. All those in favor of approving the request to advertise for the auction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I was just gonna say, I can remember when the DVD players were the thing.
The new technology, I'm sure. All right, we're on to our board reports section, or old business.
Okay, tonight we'd like to have a bond projects update. And so included in board docs tonight is the information that was included in the board update on Friday. Our recommendation, as we discussed, we'd bring back to you for consideration as we look at the different projects that are included. And it's not all of the projects, because some of the projects we believe we can handle without having the professional service of an architectural firm. For instance, looking at the tracks at the intermediate buildings, looking at the sound and lighting at Tiernan and Leibel. What they would do is simply go out and ask professionals to come in and tell us what we need to do, which is something that we feel like we can do without the additional cost. So the recommendation that you have before you tonight, and it's not, we're not bringing contracts to you tonight. Our intention will be to have this conversation and then look at bringing those contracts at the next board meeting for your consideration, is to award LWC with the roof replacement at Dennis, the improvements of paving at the bus garage, chiller replacements at Testvale, Westview, temperature control work at Crestdale, and then the boiler replacements at Dennis. And then to award the security enhancements, the elevator at Tiernan Center, and the student centers at RHS, the media centers at Test and Dennis, to Fannie and Howie. By going with the lowest bids on these service projects, or for the services for these projects, as opposed to going with one group over another, will save us right at $48,000. And so we feel really comfortable. Rob has spoken with the groups when he put it out there, answered any questions that they may have. As they looked at the scope of the project, they were familiar with our buildings, both groups, and worked with Rob on that as well. So that is our recommendation at this time. Rob, is there anything you'd like to add to regarding the bond projects? Okay. Any questions that we may have from the board?
Is there gonna be an opportunity for the committees that we had put together to look at some of this stuff, to maybe get a little more involved with it? Question I have is, there's a huge discrepancy between the security enhancements, and how does that come into play as opposed to like one project manager versus another project manager? The view of what they have in place there is one company saying just a set of double doors, is one talking, you know, double doors and like a bulletproof glass? I mean, what's all involved there as far as, yeah, that's a big discrepancy in that project. The other, I mean, there's big discrepancies in a few of them there, and I'd like to get a better
Well,
feel
the
for that.
process with each group, the three groups included Maze Design as well, as we sat down with them. Fannie Howie, we did not have them on site because they had just been through the buildings, you know,
Sure.
doing their master planning project. But we did have them on the phone. We also had John Hamilton, Mr. Glenn Slifer involved as well, of course. We talked through each project. They have not given us a design yet. They just wanted to get a scope, an idea of what were our ideas from those. We have not got down to any sketches or anything yet, so we wanted to give them an opportunity to quote on the project overall. Then they'll get down to the next stage, which I'll take my lead from Mr. Terrell on how we'll do the next stage.
Rob, a question for that. So with the security enhancements, for instance, the 88,000 from LWC as opposed to the 57,000 per Fannie and Howie, that's not the project. That's not doing the work.
No,
That's
this is
just the design.
Right.
Similar to the roof replacement at Dennis, where LWC came in at 49,000, where Fannie and Howie was 30,000 higher at 79,000. Again,
this-
that's not the materials or the work. That's simply the design.
The design and building the bid documents from that.
The real
so.
confusing one is the second one. I mean, you have 100% variance there, and I can't understand what would be that. So I think what you're looking at is just differences in philosophies of pricing that the two professional organizations have.
And they even stated that when we spoke to them, or even in their quote documents, it was real hard. They normally don't do this with professional services, is go through a bidding or a quoting process. Typically, you pick a professional service firm, like we would go with LWC or whoever, and then we go take the next step, which would be the design phase and building the bid documents, so.
Originally, when the list was sent to the board on the projects that we were gonna send out, what I call the MEP projects, weren't we gonna originally do those in-house?
What are the MMP projects for clarification?
MVP.
Temperature control work,
temperature
boiler
control,
replacement.
right.
I mean, since LWC and Fannie
Mechanical,
Howie
electrical, plumbing,
really don't have
private
any,
account.
I mean, they're gonna go out and sub, you know, like a Don Miller or an R.E. Diamond or something like that.
Right.
So,
And they had
does
indicated
something
such.
change that we wanted to?
Actually, that was an internal discussion we had with our internal staff who wanted to have at least some engineering on some of this. So as we looked at particularly Dennis and of course the temperature control work at Crestdale, so.
Well, and that's kind of my point. My point is typically we would just contract directly with an MEP instead of going to an architect then to an MEP.
Right. So we decided to throw it in the package here, and I think the number we got here from LWC is pretty fair.
Oh, it's, yeah,
So,
I'm
for that
surprised,
work, so.
I'm surprised it's that.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not complaining with the
Right.
price, I was just that the project list had changed since you had emailed us.
And that was an internal. We had discussed not adding it.
Who's we discussed?
Myself, Glenn Slifer.
Okay.
Since Glenn's our
Which-
HVAC.
And you believe him?
I do believe him. I trust him 100%. So, and it makes sense once we start discussing it.
Mr. Cross?
So
Rod, the only question I had, did both firms bid the same scope of work, design work for the project?
yes,
So in other words, if they're not gonna do construction, that they're aware that they don't have any construction oversight responsibilities?
correct.
So there is no, for any of these, there's no construction oversight responsibilities?
There, with the Fannie Howie, they said they would be on site every couple weeks, but they would not do the oversight. The project management would be us. So I would not expect them to be here every couple weeks and
Yeah.
manage the project. So it's
It's really
we
just the
discussed that.
architectural services of the
Correct.
design.
Basically, then we'll have to do our own change order processing
Correct.
and document substantial completion and release retainage and all that.
And again, we feel comfortable in doing that through the
Done that in
conversations
other
you've had.
projects.
Very good.
So,
Yeah, to answer Brad's question, I mean, are we,
I
Have an
guess
opportunity.
my concern is, so are we gonna be developing the specs, or are the architects gonna be developing the specs?
We'll be working with them if these are approved. You guys will finalize all bid design and bid documents, so.
Because like I used the example earlier in the email thread, so ABC Construction is bidding to do the controls at Crestdale, and so they're gonna have to bid that to under LWC's scope or design, and then Fanning Howie is going to be doing the security enhancements for the entrances and everything to all 6 elementary schools. Are those controls and everything going to be matched up? Are we going to be the ones in charge of developing, those specs to make sure everything is aligned?
Right.
Is it going to be called out an exact product we're going to be using, or is it going to be called, this product that meets this standard? And then you have 2 different brands trying to coexist.
That's a good point, because during those discussions, we talked to them about that anything they put in there has to match what we currently have. So, for example, the controls have to go back to our Havel Brothers system that is a system that we have, say, at Crestdale.
Right.
For the security controls, they would have to match what we already have in the buildings, so, which, for the most part, all of our security systems are identical across the building, so.
Okay.
So once you get the plan is once you get, the design work back from these, so that's at the point that the project
Why are we doing
groups
it
would then
ourselves? Yeah.
go through those plans
Yeah, I
at that
think-
time perhaps.
Right, yeah.
And before going to the
He- when
final
he did, he
approval
said
of
he
the
thought that was a
designs,
fair
et cetera.
price.
Right.
Ron? It's a generally accepted legal premise in public works construction that even a design that, or bid specs that may identify a product by brand name are not limiting the responsive bid to that product, but that is only a designation of a quality standard. And there is a process in most front-end documents that allow the bidders to offer substitutes and have the architect review that and determine that it is in fact a comparable, because obviously you can't limit competition, and that's the whole essence of public works.
Correct. It's usually tagged with or equal afterwards, so.
It's a demonstrative standard, it's not
Right.
limitation on,
I'm just trying to make sure we're,
well, obviously we need to have coordination to the
Right.
extent that there are interfaces of various scopes of work by different contractors.
that's my concern with going with 2 different parties for the designs.
I guess my bigger concern would be if we were doing 2 different groups designing the security entrances, 3 at one and 3 at another.
Yeah, I
where
agree
there
with
could
that.
be the differences. but
understand
when we're
that.
Doing the specific projects, I think will be all right.
Very good.
And I guess I understand that the capital committee will meet, but I guess I would have liked to had a meeting where some of these specs were gone through with that committee prior to release. I mean, we said roof at Dennis. I'm not sure, as much for our information as for to also provide possible assistance. I guess I'll wait till the bids or the designs are returned now, I guess is when we're meeting again. But I would like a little more involvement.
The good thing is, we're not under the gun to approve contracts next week. I mean, we have time on this. If we feel like that we would like to have a discussion and talk about scope and dig into it deeper, we have the time. Now, we wanna be able to get the design and the bid and the process out so early, January, February, so they can have allocation of time in the summer to get it done, because they're gonna wanna do most of the work when kids aren't in school, which is only gonna give us about a 6-week period.
Yeah, it's not very long.
But what the good news is, this is being paid for with the bond money that the bonds that we're gonna sell next week.
Right.
So it's not like we have this fast-track timeline. So if the board feels like it needs 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks, we have that. That's the will of the board.
Karen, did you have something?
I just would like to remind the board that the more that we do delay the project piece now, the higher the price will be. So the fall is the norm time to start getting those bids, whether we complete projects or whatever that timing is for that, but it does drive the pricing. If we do wait to bid it until January, February, we may not get it done during the summer when kids aren't in school because of the timing in which the construction processes happen. Mr. Cross let us know before that, you know, in other projects he's seen, those prices continue to drive up the farther into the fall and winter that we get. So I just want to remind the board that that's something we did consider when we took out these bonds, and the timing of everything is each time we delay, the higher that price drives for those projects.
Yeah, our mission isn't to delay
I actually
it
don't
for
agree
sure.
with that. I mean, I live construction every day, so.
Okay, well, our mission isn't to
that's-
delay it,
that's
we'll just,
I mean, that's just what we're told, and all I can go by is the information that we've been provided by multiple sources that let us know that, so.
what we'll do is work toward everyone feeling comfortable and getting to the specs and
thing the
understanding it.
contractor's gonna be looking at is when's the construction schedule.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, if they know if they're gonna be doing this next summer, and and their contract with their employee group is up at the end of the year, they're gonna factor,
Absolutely, yeah.
they're gonna factor room in there if they have to give a bid, whether they give that bid in October or next January.
All right.
And we are looking at a very, very tight market right now.
No, I'm sure.
A lot of work out there, and a lot of people are
Yeah.
pretty
And
busy.
if these tariffs keep getting passed,
Yeah,
Well, we'll work at getting, you know, everyone understanding a little bit more of the specs, and if we get everyone there, then I don't foresee delays. So. All right. Preview of upcoming meetings and events.
sure, one thing that I'd like to just remind the board, last week I asked all of you if you were interested in attending any of the symphony orchestra concerts that they have this year. We have tickets available for those. I know many of you have been there. It's an amazing performance. They do just a fine job. And so if you would just jump on their website, look at their upcoming concerts, and then let me know just as soon as you
Absolutely.
can. If I don't hear anything from you guys by the middle of next week, then I'm gonna open it up to the next round of people, so we can make sure that we're providing, filling the seats, one, but then, which we appreciate the partnership with them, and then, allowing other people to have opportunities to participate as well.
Fantastic. Any other upcoming events or anything you want to talk about? All right. How about a bell ringer?
So our bell ringer this evening, I know many of you participated in our homecoming parade, and we thank you for that. But I especially want to give a shout out to Hunter Lambright.
No kidding.
He does a phenomenal job in organizing that. Had more participants and entries into the parade than he's had since he's been doing that, and he did a masterful job at organization with that. And then also want to especially give a shout out to Isaiah Cox. For those of you who don't know, Isaiah was one who presented over in Indy a couple of weeks ago, but he is in charge of our bleacher creatures, self-appointed, and does an amazing job of getting those kids organized. And
And he just got some T-shirts.
he did get some T-shirts. And he wasn't satisfied with the activities after the homecoming parade in the past, and so they went back to the way it used to be back in the good old days, and had an event afterwards, and food trucks, and a dunk tank, and class games, and John got some great pictures there. If you haven't seen them, just look at John's Facebook page. But Isaiah Cox has done an amazing job, and if the kid doesn't go on to do great things, I'll be shocked, just because of his motivation and organizational skills that he has. So shout out to both of those gentlemen, and we appreciate the work they do for not only Richmond Community Schools, but Richmond community in general.
Very good. I never know quite how long. I know.